You're listening to Payments Innovation, a podcast dedicated to helping business leaders navigate today's global digital economy. Looking to learn about the latest innovations within fintech and payments? You've come to the right place. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to another edition of Payments Innovation Podcast. This is my first video edition, so they've forced me to be on video now, so I've had to kind of have a wipe, do my makeup. But I'm joined today by Joe van der Voort from Remote. Joe, great to have you on the podcast, and thanks for joining all the way from Braga in Portugal.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
Now you're all set up. I can see you've got the headphones, the microphone. My marketing team have been shouting at me because I haven't ordered the gear, and I've actually moved out of New York City for a couple of months, so I haven't kind of transported the gear with me. But hopefully, I come through as professional sounding as you.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not hearing myself, so.
So listen, why don't we dive into kind of you and your background, and then come on to the company Remote and kind of how you got into that and how you set that up.
Sure. Yeah. I have a background in neuroscience. So I worked as a scientist for a number of years. Dropped out of that because I discovered that the world of the academic world and the world of science is very slow, and I'm a rather impatient person. So I left that to pursue, my own ventures. I started a startup that ran out of money really quickly. Startup was actually somewhat related to what I do today. We were trying to use like early machine learning to match people with jobs. But I didn't have the experience and nor the money. Like I literally had no money to live on, so that stopped really quickly. But I was a pretty good programmer, so I ended up finding a job in the Netherlands building software for the Dutch government, identity software, and there I met Sid, the CEO of GitLab, who was also working there, and when he left to work on GitLab, I joined him, and I led product at GitLab since the beginning until I left, which was January last year, 2019. Feels like a really long time ago. It was not that long ago.
So you've got some scars from the startup world, and then you obviously went to work for what is now an incredibly successful company, GitLab. Yeah. But then you decided that you hadn't got enough scars, so you thought you'd go again. And you came to Remote. So perhaps we can just spend a couple of minutes on what Remote is. I think the clue is in the name, but for those of you who don't get it, what's Remote all about?
Yeah, so when I was at GitLab never had any offices, so we would just hire the best person we could find, and we would be faced with the same problem every time, which is we would hire someone, and then we had to figure out, this is a person that lives in Portugal. We've never hired someone in Portugal, and now we have to, pay them, and get them benefits and get them something compliant. And doing that was a pain. We're a software business. We don't want to be in a business of, managing all these compliance issues and employment challenges. And so, our options were always the same, which is we found our own entity in a country, which is at incredible cost and overhead. Or alternatively, we work with some employer of record kind of service. And so we did both. We created a bunch of entities. We worked with a number of these kind of employer of record businesses. And the experience was always painful. It was very bureaucratic. It was very slow. And on top of that, it was very expensive. And this was a challenge that, we had all the time at GitLab. We constantly struggled with it. And we were limited in hiring people in particular countries because of not finding a good solution. We had to set a soft cap on particular countries, and other countries we had problems because we wanted to move over people from working as contractors to employees, and that was always very challenging. And so I figured if I'm going to do something else after GitLab, and I was always intending to found my own startup again, I want to help more organizations build a distributed team like we did at GitLab because of all the advantages that has. And so I figured I would try to solve what we've experienced as one of the biggest hurdles. So it wasn't communication, it wasn't collaboration remotely. It was this. And so what Remote does is we provide that service. We are an employer of record in many different countries in the world. And we do that by having our own entity. So I am personally going through the pain again of setting up all these entities in all these different countries, figuring out what the local labor laws are. But so that our customers who are our employers can come to us and they say, I want to hire someone in Portugal. And then we say, okay, and we take care of that. And then the only thing they have to do every single month is just pay our invoice. And what we do is take care of payroll, benefits, and compliance-related matters in all the countries that they hire people through remote with. And there's a few things that are unique about us. First, that we only have our own entity, so we operate our own global infrastructure, which is complicated, but it gives us the benefit of being very fast and very flexible. And second to that, both me and my co-founder Marcella, we are software people. We've been building software for a large part of our lives, most of our adult life. And so the whole business is just ran by like a simple, relatively simple app with it. And signing up and employing someone is like signing up to Twitter, really. And then lastly, we all provide it through a flat fee. So we don't take a percentage of total cost of employment or anything. And that's very, that was a very conscious decision because we want to encourage employers, paying fairly everywhere in the world.
So I think it's interesting because you guys you had a podcast, back in kind of 2018, I think your first episode was. And I think it was actually your partner, Carla, who was on the podcast.
On the first episode, yeah.
On the first episode. And I think you were talking then around kind of why remote working is something to discuss at all. Yeah. I guess, a couple of years ago, it was something that maybe some cool kind of tech-focused companies did, but the rest of the world wasn't really there yet. And I think it's clear that for personal reasons, and you talk about this a lot, and I think you were expecting a child at the point, and so for personal reasons, you've got to spend time with your dog, with your family. You see your children growing up. You don't have the 2-3 hours a day of commuting. But I think Carla mentioned something on that was quite interesting, and she was saying that a lot of companies were just not really there yet. They weren't really open to employing remote people. Now, 2020 happens, and this lovely thing called COVID happens. So how have you seen your business shift in the last kind of 6 months? And is it a different type of client or employer that you're now speaking to who's looking to say, listen, because remote is great for the employee, but it's also great for the employer because you have this global talent pool to go and pick from, and it doesn't really matter where they're moving. So if an employee comes to you and says, I'm leaving in 2 months, I'm going to move abroad. I guess with you guys and companies like you guys, that's fine. We can sort this out. So how have you seen that shift in, I guess, type of customer?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, we've been only operating as like a business that sells its product since around the time that COVID started. So like there's not a clear before and after for us. It's all like one big swoop. What we did see, however, is that a lot of our customers are the typical companies that you would expect. Not as much as you would think. Like we have a few like very interesting organizations. We have a few companies that make food or like hardware, and that are just as distributed as the software companies that work with us. I think the interesting bit has been seeing the shift in some organizations. There are quite a few of our customers and our prospective customers that we're talking to that they used to be everybody in the office, and like our expansion models essentially open another office in one other city, and that now basically all their new hires, they come in remotely, and none of them have the expectation of ever going to an office. And that has been very interesting. And I think a few examples that I spoke to about more often are organizations that used to bring in people even from abroad, help them move, help them get a visa, that are now like, well, everybody's working remotely anyway, might as well not move them over and just have them work from wherever they want. And that has been very interesting to see that, we have customers that have thousands of employees, and now they have the first few that are essentially out of San Francisco, and then like all like across the ocean, on the other side of the planet. But that's been very interesting. And I think that's a very positive trend because I think ultimately that's where we should be going. Yeah.
And I mean, we set ourselves up as Currency Cloud as what we like to call kind of remote first, but something like this forces your hand And there's so many things that you don't really understand.
Yeah.
So it's been a really interesting journey, and I'm sure a lot of people are going through this. But listen, so I want to shift slightly because this is obviously a payments innovation podcast, and whilst I think remote working is on top of everybody's mind at the moment about how to do it and the benefits that it can bring if done correctly. Obviously, one of the big challenges as a company around starting to hire people in different locations and especially different countries is the payroll aspect. And so how do you suddenly, and unless you're going to open up an office and a bank account, as a European company in Australia or in wherever it might be, you're going to have to pay your employees.
Yeah.
And they're not going to necessarily accept euros everywhere in the world or dollars everywhere in the world. So talk to me a little bit about how you guys have seen that challenge and how you're kind of addressing that, and what employees or employers and employees kind of should think about either becoming a remote employee or starting to employ people kind of cross borders in different countries.
Well, I mean, to answer the last question, is they should just work with us because we solve all the pain. But
I set you up there, didn't I? So
yeah, it's very, very good of you, Rich. But well, let me start by saying that this is a massive, massive challenge for us. It has been, continues to be so. It's an incredible challenge. So one of the things is we have all these entities across the world. In almost every one of those countries, we do have a bank account, and that's not because we want to. Well, we really don't want to. We would love to just be able to have one bank account and arrange everything from there. But that's not at all the case. The challenges have been very interesting and very varied. Core challenges are relatively simple. Like, you have multiple currencies and you are legally required to always pay out. Everybody that's employed through us is an employee, and as an employee, you have to get the exact salary that is on your payslip. Like everywhere in the world, it's the same, and it means that you have to have a way to reliably know how much money is going to end up on someone's account, which is actually a lot harder than said. It's easy if you have one bank account and you send the money over, but it becomes significantly more difficult if you have many bank accounts. You have to move money between those bank accounts. You have to deal with the various currencies. And then you have things like transfer fees and other interesting surprises. And even so far as, I live here in Portugal, and here, if you want to pay tax authorities, which we do all the time as remote, right? Because we take care of payroll, so we pay the tax authorities. If you pay the tax authorities, you have to do it in a specific way. And traditionally here, it's been said, like, you can only use a Portuguese bank account because only Portuguese bank accounts have built their system in a way so that you can pay directly to the Portuguese tax authorities. Now, luckily, we figured out a way to do it without going, we can use Currency Cloud actually for this. But it's been incredibly challenging to do this and incredibly expensive, to be honest, right? If we have a network of bank accounts, and it's still not easy. It's still a lot of work to make this happen. One of the things we have to think about is that, from an accounting principle, all entities in the world, they have to all sort of act as if they are their own business and they work fully independently. And so we have to think about things like transfer pricing and that kind of fun stuff. So yeah, what can I say? It's a real hassle. It's a lot of work, and what we are actively working on, which is why you and I are also talking and we know each other, is we are actively working on automating this all away. So we use a whole bunch of tricks, but a lot of things we can't fully automate yet. And we're looking to use Currency Cloud to solve most of our issues.
and this kind of feels like leading the witness slightly. It wasn't a loaded question. It's a space that I think we find really interesting. Because I think there's a problem here that we can help solve together with people like you guys. But I think it's one of these things that you didn't necessarily set yourselves up to be a payments company or an FX company, and your clients are the same. But it just so happens that in terms of payments, it's a part of what you do. It's a part of what people have to think about. And for me, it kind of comes down to this whole world of, I guess, kind of embedded finance, embedded payments, and how people are just looking to have a seamless process. I just want to be able to pay the person that I've employed, the other side of the Atlantic or wherever it might be, seamlessly and on time. As you said, these guys have a right to be paid what's on their payslip, and they don't want to see a couple of percent taken out because of the cross currency. They don't want to see €30, €30 taken out through a corresponding banking network. So there's so many things that you need to think about. Did you think it would be this complex getting into it? Obviously, you talked about the scars from previous startups, and you thought actually, what we had at GitLab was really interesting in terms of the benefits of having a remote workforce and what you could bring to the rest of the world, I guess. But when you started thinking about this, did you think it would be that complex? Because when I first got into payments and FX, I didn't realize it was that complex and that many moving parts. And I have a number of scars from kind of 15, 20 years in the business, but that's my business. This isn't necessarily your business. So
no idea that it would be this complex. In a lot of ways, the way we reasoned about it early on is that we might struggle with fees and like high large expenses because we have to do all these international transfers, and because paying to specific people and trying to expedite payments, like that was our main concern, is like it was just going to be very expensive. And I think the real challenge lies in if you roll it yourself, well, which is one, it just doesn't work, right? Like that is what we've learned. Like it doesn't work. You can't use a single bank account and just reliably pay all over the world. Like it does not work from like a traditional bank, or let alone the newcomer banks, which usually use like a different bank backing them. We had a lot of bad experiences with that. I think the challenges have been not so much the cost. It is like for a large degree been reliability or ability at all to pay, right? And lack of automation. It's been extremely disappointing to see what banks can do. Like we can barely get them to do the thing, like basic banking things, and even then we often struggle. We start out as for the banks, each individual bank considers us a small company. We have a few $million on the bank, and no one cares about that. But we have like 25 international entities. So we have to do things that like large enterprises tend to do banking wise, but these banks, they don't recognize us as large enterprise. And so they can't do it. They can't do it as any waivers. Like it's hard at all to speak with anyone. It takes us weeks to get in contact with someone. And we have a lot of failed payments. We have a lot of, struggles to identify what the cost is of things. We have no transparency whatsoever about anything we do really. And that's really tricky. Like it's been really hard. And to be honest, like we thought early on, like there would be many payment providers that could solve our problems. The more we learn, the less that's true. So yeah, it's been incredibly challenging. And we're very lucky. We have a very strong team with people that have experience in these kind of things. So, we've been figuring it out, but it's been very difficult.
Yeah, and listen, I can attest to that from the conversations we've had with the team. It's the team over there kind of understand it. Now they don't necessarily have the silver bullet at the moment, but they understand the challenges. But there are plenty of people who have these challenges who have no idea whatsoever how to handle it. And I'm guessing unless people like remote can solve these challenges, then this is surely a big barrier for an employer looking to employ people overseas, but also an employee, because ultimately, if I want to be a remote employee, but there's no way I can get paid kind of on time and in full, then it might affect my decision to kind of move to a different role.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that we were always hoping to do is like, if we are very successful in allowing essentially anyone to be hired from anywhere, we give individuals much more freedom in choosing the kind of organization they want to work for. And a hard requirement for that is you get paid on time, sufficiently the correct amount, and compliant.
It's not a big ask, right? So
yeah. I mean, it is not a big ask, but to be fair, if you live in the United States or in the UK, and in almost all cases you're employed locally by a local employer, and they will be able to pay you exactly and precisely. But if you live almost anywhere else in the world and you work for a company in the UK or the US, in many cases you'll be employed. You won't be employed. You'll be a contractor, and you have a contractor agreement. And the burden is really on you to figure out how to receive your money, because your employer is just going to wire you US dollars or British pound, and then it's up to you to see whether you can receive it, what kind of rates you're going to get, and how that's going to work. And there's many different players in the market, but yeah, it feels very strange to rely on this like random little banking app that you discover that has really surprisingly good rates, but it could also shut you down any day or the next. And it's a very interesting dynamic. And we hope that by doing this really well, making sure that it's all very easy. And for you as an employee and as an employer, like there's no threshold to hire internationally. We level the playing field a little bit.
I love that. So we're going to fix this obviously together. I think we're having some really good conversations. But so apart from the payments, moving aside, I think this is a good kind of way to end. So what does the rest of 2020 and moving into 2021 hold for you guys? Apart from solving obviously these interesting payment challenges.
Yeah, so we're expanding across many countries, which is a big challenge. It takes a lot of time, an incredible amount of paperwork. I never thought I would buy a dedicated document scanner, but it's right here behind me in my office, just so I can sign things, scan them quickly, 30-page documents, and send them on their way. We're just expanding everything we do. So we started out by offering basically payroll and standard benefits to a handful of countries. By the end of the year, we hope to be in about 40 different countries, which is going to be a stretch. It's going to be hard, but we're doing our best to get there. And at the same time, we're expanding our products. So, we're making it easier and faster to do anything you would want to do. And on anything, for instance, the ability to give options to employees worldwide, which is an incredible challenge because individual countries are not prepared for it like the US is. But we are pretty confident that we have a good solution. So I'm excited about that rolling out.
Awesome. Well, I think this is a startup that looks like it's really going to work. And I think I've told you this before. You seem to have a crystal ball to set up this type of business just in time for this pandemic. But Joe, listen, thanks so much for coming on. Wish you all the best, and listen, together we can solve these payments challenges.
Currency Cloud is an online payments company that makes international money transfers fast and simple for businesses. We're building a borderless future where international transactions are seamless for a better user experience. Discover the world's most trusted payment platform and our toolkit of developer-friendly APIs at currencycloud.com.
You've been listening to the Payments Innovation Podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe now in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thanks for listening. Until next time.